Bitcoin, almost no movement the last couple days. Now, I'm going to explain why this is a concern, okay? And again, this is just pure TA facts. It is what it is. And by the way, concern doesn't mean it's going to drop. It just gives you the probability to start to lean in that direction. EBTC still dumping on the market in Bitcoin have been associated with big news events, right? 2017, the futures launched. That was the exact high on Bitcoin. In 2021, the first high was the IPO of Coinbase. Then we dumped to 30,000 from 65,000. The second one was the ETF for the futures that launched. That was the top at 69,000. So here we have another top potentially that coexists with a spot ETF.
Wait a minute, everyone. Get ready for the ultimate crypto investing website, the Bitcoin Cella. It's your golden ticket to an exclusive insiders club. Expert predictions, on-chain data, and breaking news, all for you. Imagine all crypto insights landing in your inbox daily, like having your own expert team. Don't miss this VIP opportunity. Click the link and secure your spot. Join now and ride the crypto roller coaster with the Bitcoin Cella. Gareth Soloway will tell us what is going on with Bitcoin and why he is worried about its price. He says Bitcoin has not moved much in the last few days, and that could mean trouble. Bitcoin is influenced by big news events, like the futures launch in 2017, the Coinbase IPO in 2021, and the futures ETF in 2021. He says these events mark the tops for Bitcoin, and now we have another event coming up, the spot ETF. He says this could be another top, or maybe not. He says he will show us how to read the charts and the probabilities, and how to trade the crypto market. You don't want to miss this. So grab your coffee and join us while chatting with Gareth Soloway.
Bitcoin, almost no movement the last couple days. Now, I'm going to explain why this is a concern, okay? And again, this is just pure TA facts. It is what it is. And by the way, concern doesn't mean it's going to drop. It just gives you the probability to start to lean in that direction. When you have a fall like we've had, and you start to go sideways, what it's doing is you're essentially the buyers that are buying this dip are being sold into by other players. And that essentially eventually exhausts. If it keeps going sideways, the buyers that are buying the dip eventually all get filled on their positions. And essentially what you're creating here is a bear flag. Now, this is a very preliminary factor, right? Meaning that when you only have 2 or 3 candles sideways, it's what I call an immature bear flag. Immature bear flags have the lowest probability of success. Generally, I avoid them. But once you get to 5, 6, 7 candles sideways, that becomes a mature bear flag. The probabilities start to move more strongly in the bear flag camp that you're going to see a breakdown. So again, right now, it's nothing major. But again, the fact that we're not jumping back up tells you that the buyers that are buying the dip are being met with sellers. And this is all these ETFs that continue to buy Bitcoin. There's whether it's GBTC still dumping on the market, whether it's other players, that's something to pay attention to. The other thing that I think has to be noted here is that I mentioned this the other day, I think it was last week, is that we know that historically major pivot tops in Bitcoin have been associated with big news events, right? 2017, the futures launched. That was the exact high on Bitcoin. In 2021, the first high was the IPO of Coinbase. Then we dumped to 30,000 from 65,000. The second one was the ETF for the futures that launched. That was the top at 69,000. So here we have another top potentially that coexists with a spot ETF. The other thing to note is that in those previous cycles, Bitcoin has led the stock market by 6 weeks, which I showed you just, I believe it was a few sessions ago, either earlier this week or late last week. So it is something I'm watching not only based on Bitcoin, but also in relation to the stock market. We're now into this top about, 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, which means you probably have 2 to 3 weeks more that the market can do its thing before potentially I would start to expect a rollover. That's assuming Bitcoin doesn't jump back up into a bull mode.
Gareth Soloway explains his analysis of Bitcoin's price movement and his trading strategy. He is concerned about Bitcoin's lack of movement in the last few days, as it could indicate a bearish continuation pattern. When the price falls and then goes sideways, it means the buyers are being outnumbered by the sellers, and eventually the buyers will run out of steam. This creates a bear flag, which is a sign of a downward continuation. Gareth sees a bear flag as more reliable when it has more candles sideways, as it shows more consolidation and pressure. He avoids immature bear flags, which have only 2 or 3 candles sideways, as they have a low probability of success. He waits for mature bear flags, which have 5 or more candles sideways, as they have a higher probability of breaking down. The fact that Bitcoin is not bouncing back up shows that the sellers are still in control and that the ETFs that are buying Bitcoin are not enough to push the price higher. He pays attention to the ETFs that are dumping Bitcoin on the market, like GBTC. Gareth also notes that Bitcoin's major tops have been associated with big news events, like the futures launch in 2017, the Coinbase IPO in 2021, and the futures ETF in 2021. These events create hype and euphoria, but also mark the end of the bull run. He says now we have another potential top with the spot ETF, which is an ETF that holds actual Bitcoins, not futures contracts. Gareth Soloway also observes that Bitcoin has led the stock market by 6 weeks in the previous cycles, meaning that when Bitcoin peaked, the stock market peaked 6 weeks later. He is watching this relationship, as it could imply that the stock market will also correct soon. He says we are now 3 weeks into the top, which means we have another 3 weeks before the market could roll over. This is assuming that Bitcoin does not resume its bull mode.
GDP was expected to be 2%. That was the forecast. Actual GDP comes in at 3.3%. Now, this is a big beat on GDP. Interestingly enough, the markets are not freaking out about it. They're mostly kind of saying, you know what? Generally, this might be a Goldilocks scenario. Maybe even if we weaken a little bit, GDP will come back to, let's say, 1%, which is still growth. So interesting there. We'll take a look at the Fed Watch tool and see what the Fed projections are for rate hikes or rate cuts coming up over the next few months. Next one, we have durable goods coming in at 0.0%. This might be why we saw no real reaction on the GDP number. That was less than forecast. Forecast was for 1.1% growth in durable goods orders. It came in at 0.0. Core did come in slightly better at 0.6% versus forecast at 0.2%. All right, as we go down, jobless claims. Jobless claims coming in, jumping 25,000, so 25,000 more people than last week filed for unemployment. And again, that was at 214,000. Estimates were for 200,000. And again, last week we had 189,000. So again, notice how the GDP was stronger than expected, but the other numbers are coming in weaker. And I think that's taking the bite out of the stronger than expected numbers, which generally, remember, if everything was stronger than expected, you'd see less chance of a rate cut and the markets would actually be falling. We are not seeing that. In fact, the markets have inched up off of this data today. All right, now we're getting into earnings, guys. Tesla tumbles. They basically said notably lower growth this year. Tesla stock's trading down 9% pre-market. The chart's been consolidating underneath support, signaling potential weakness into earnings. What we can see here is Humana getting crushed today. This does not happen very often where you see a medical stock like this or an insurance stock getting slammed. But again, they're basically saying there's horrid guidance here for 2024. They're blaming surging Medicare costs. Humana stock is dropping 15%. What we do have is we have American Airlines jumping on better than expected numbers. Basically, a lot of these airline stocks have been beaten down quite a bit. So again, that is getting a bid. Southwest Airlines is getting a bid. A lot of the airline stocks are getting a bid in sympathy to American Airlines as well as with their earnings out there. So again, nothing major there though. I was looking at the chart earlier. It's not up enough to really note a major mover with a potential resistance for a short. IBM. Now, this is an interesting one. IBM jumping on better than expected earnings. The stock again, and the reason why I want to point this out, guys, is I look for gems like this. This is what I would call a hidden gem. Not that it's a hidden stock. I mean, everyone knows about IBM. But what I like to show you guys is just this, right? So, and again, let me flip to the intraday chart. So let's go to the intraday. So you can see right here, this is where earnings come out. It jumps from basically $173, $174, goes to almost 190, pulling back to about 186 right here. So one of the things that I look at, and by the way, I'm not chasing this, but I want to make a point here about looking for these hidden gems. So while everyone else is like, oh, I got to be in NVIDIA, I got to be in Microsoft, I got to be in, all the rest of these Magnificent Seven, Apple and Google and all these other ones, which, by the way, are so concentrated by investors and funds alike. These are the things that I look for. I look for stocks that usually are cyclical in terms of their mega moves and then they go to sleep. And you can see this in Apple. You can see this in a lot of stocks. They have periods where they kind of become out of favor, where other stocks take the lead, and eventually they reinvent their business to start to catch up.
Gareth Soloway discusses the latest economic data, including the GDP, durable goods, and jobless claims. He says the GDP came in stronger than expected at 3.3%, but the other indicators were weaker. This creates a balanced scenario for the markets, which are not worried about inflation or rate hikes. He will use the Fed Watch tool to see the market expectations for the Fed's actions. Gareth reviews some of the earnings reports from Tesla, Humana, American Airlines, and IBM. Tesla fell 9% on lower growth guidance. Humana plunged 15% on poor outlook and rising Medicare costs. American Airlines and other airlines rose on better results, and IBM surged on beating estimates. He likes IBM as a hidden gem, as it is a cyclical stock that can reinvent itself and outperform the market. And don't forget to subscribe to Bitcoin Cella. You will get the most important news in your inbox every day and for free. Don't miss this opportunity. If you like the video, hit that like button and subscribe for more daily updates. Remember, knowledge is power, and we're here to help you on your money journey. Until next time, happy investing.